So I don't know if everybody got the message, but we're starting a brand new topic today. I decided that kol kol kitzim, all the cases are over with already, and we're going to start a brand new topic. Just to again, the rest of the shiurim, there much you know, you know, cover the same questions and elaborates and learns different gemaras. But I decided that it was time to move on to a new topic. Okay, so we're going to start on page Kuf Mem Aleph. Right? Kuf Mem Aleph, Shnei Alma, the years of the world. Very, a little bit off the straight topic of Mashiach, actually. But again, not off it, but a completely different approach or different part of the sugya. Okay, so okay, just wait until everybody. So we're starting on page Kuf Mem Aleph, Shnei Alma, the years of the world. And this has to do with is quoting. We're basing ourselves on a Gemara, the next piece of Gemara in the Sugya, after the inyan of the Kates that we spent quite a few weeks on. So it's at Zayin Amarov, it's Zayin Beis. Omer Rav Katina, Kuf Mem Aleph. Omer Rav Katina, Shis Alfei Shoni Havi Alma. The world is 6,000 years. That's the time span of the whole creation. V'chad Choruf, and 1,000 years will be the world will be destroyed. So the world exists for 6,000 years, and there's going to be a year of Charuv. Okay, what that means, we'll try to see as we go along. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, "V'niskov Hashem levado bayomahu," that Hashem will be nisgav, exalted, elevated on that day, levado, by himself. So that means, the Maral explains, as we'll see a little later, that means that if Hashem is by himself, that means that all other creations are not going to be existing anymore. Hashem is going to be the sole existence. Abaya Omar, Trei Chorav, that is going to be 2,000 years of Chorav. Shenemar Yechayenu Miyomayim, Hashem will give us life for the 2 days, from the 2 days, Bayom Shlishi Kimenu, which means something like that, that for the two days, again, we're always equating the day of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with 1,000 years. So 2 days is 2,000, and he will revive us after the 2 days by Yom HaShlishi, and on the third day, which is the third millennia, the third thousandth, Yekimenu v'nichya lefanav, he will bring us back, and we will live in front of him. Okay, so the good news is that after the Churban is going to, it's the Churban, after the Chorov, I shouldn't say Churban, after the Chorov of either the 1,000 years or 2,000 years, it's going to be, the world is going to be brought back, but there's going to be a tkufa of paralleling, as we will see, paralleling Shabbos. Right? So just like there's six days and there's a seventh day of Shvita Muchletet, where everything ceases, all activity ceases. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's work in the world ceases, and so it's Keilu HaKadosh Baruch Hu is by himself in the world, and that's the essence of what Shabbos is that it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence fills all of existence in a way that it doesn't do that during the other 6 days of the year of the week. So there will be an inyan of Shabbos, and there will be either for 1 year or for 1,000 years or 2,000 years. Says the Gemara. Tanya, the Gemara goes on to say, Tanya Kavose Rav Katina. We have a brisa that is like Rav Katina, Kashem Shashvis Mishametes Shana Achas Lezayin Shamim. So he talks about Shvis, right, which is, of course, parallel Shabbos as well, but just like this, the Shemitah is Mishamet, 1 year out of 7. There's 6 years of work, and 7th year or not. Kacha Olam Mishamet Elef Shonim L'Shivas Alafim Shana. So the world is also going to have a similar process, right, of 1,000 years for every 7,000. Shenemar v'nizkar Hashem levada b'yamahu v'omer mizmar shir liyom HaShabbos Right? The pasuk says, "Milashil Yom Shabbos, Yom Shekulo Shabbos." So there's a Yom, which is 1,000 years, which is Kulo Shabbos. So that's a remez to this period of time. V'omer, and it says, Ki elef shanim be'enecha ki yom esmol ki avor, because 1,000 years in Hashem's eyes is like yesterday, the day. Ki avor, as it passes. Okay, so that's the first thing is that we'll talk about, and then we'll read another two lines before, and we'll leave the rest of the Gemara for another time. But then the Gemara says, "Tana Dvelio," a very famous statement, right? Brought in other Gemaras as well, but it's brought here in Sanhedrin. Sheishis alofim shana havi alma. The world is going to be 6,000 years, right? Shnei alofim tohu, 2,000 years of tohu, emptiness. Shnei alofim Torah, 2,000 years of Torah. Shnei alofim Yemos HaMashiach. And what's really supposed to be is that there's going to be 2,000 years of Yemos HaMashiach, okay, which would have started in the year 4,000, okay, and the year 4,000, it was in the way in the how we call it, the Common Era, was which year? Anybody calculate these years? Okay, so what we have to remember is this is just always useful to remember. Just whenever we want to convert the Hebrew dates to English dates, the year 1240 in the Common Era, the year 1240 was 5,000. Okay, 5,000 was the year 1240. Okay, and so we're 5,786, right? So that's 786 after the year 1240. So that makes 2026. Okay, so the year 5,000 was the year 1240, and of course, then the year 4,000 was the year 240, 240 of the Common Era, which is the cheshbon that we'll see right away. And that was supposed to be, again, that was the end of the second set, right? The 2,000 years of Torah was in the year 240, and from 240 out is Yemos HaMashiach, but then it says, right, Ubavonosenu sherabu, and because of our sins, which are many, Yatsu mehem yatsu. So we've already passed by, right? And this was already in the time of the Gemara, which was only a few hundred years after the year 240. And so imagine now that we're already, well over 1,700 years after the year 240, 1,800 years after the year 240. So, okay, so we don't have much time left, as we will see, but right, until the end of the sixth millennium. Okay, we'll stop here in the Gemara now. Now go down to the bottom. Just there's Rashi. He brings the Rashi. Havi alma ha'olam kach miskayim. That's going to be the kim of the olam. Beis alafim hayatohu. So his girl says the word 2,000 years word tohu. Why? Tachas shelo nitno adayin Torah. This was because, right, of the fact that the Torah had not been given yet. V'haya ha'olam ketohu. And the world was like tohu, was empty. As tohu v'aretz hayatohu v'avohu. It was empty and void, and there wasn't Torah in the world, right, for the first 2,000 years of the world's existence. And Rashi says, Ume Adam Arishon ad shehoya Avraham ben Nun beis shana, from the time that Adam Arishon until Avraham Avinu reached the age of 52, Ika alpayim shana, kedemucha kekroi. Okay, so you can make the cheshbonos. Right? I didn't make them, but as Chazal tell us that Avraham Avinu was, if you can't calculate all the years of the 20 generations from Adam to Noach and Noach to Avraham Avinu, and you should subtract all the years that overlapped to the different generations, you come up with this figure that Avraham Avinu was born, right, in the year, let's say, 1,948, right, after creation, and when he reached the age of 52, that was the beginning, right? Because when the 2,000 years were completed, Osak Avram b'Torah. That's when Avram began being seriously Osek b'Torah. Shenemar b'sanefesh asher osu b'choron. because it says about Avraham Avinu, right, that he took the nefesh, which they made in Choron, in the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha, u'metargeminan the shabidu li'oraisa b'Choron. The targum of the nefesh asher also b'Choron. What does it mean? That he brought them, he was meshabed them, he brought them to Torah in Choron. Gemira, we have a tradition. The Ahu Shaita have Avram Bar Chamishim v'Tartin Shnin. He was 52 years old. So the beginning of the 2,000 years of Torah was at this point in Avraham Avinu's life. Ushnei alafim Torah. Okay, so now Rashi is going to give us a little bit more of the calculations. Anybody wants to take a pencil and paper, they can work along with us. But otherwise we'll have to we'll see it in our heads. Min hanefesh asher osu b'choron ad alpayim shnos hamashiach, right? So we have 2,000 years, right, from the nefesh asher osu b'choron when Abraham was 52 until the 2,000 years of Moshiach. In other words, we're talking about the middle 2,000 years. So he says, first of all, so here's the calculation: Arba'im shana ad shenolad Yitzchak, 48 years until Yitzchak was born. Yitzchak was 100. V'shishim shana mishenolad Yitzchak ad shenolad Yaakov, because it says he was 60. So Harei Kuf Ches, that's 108. V'Kuf Lamed shehayu liYaakov k'shebol Mitzrayim, 130 years until Yaakov came to Mitzrayim. That's how old. That's it says in the pasuk. That's how old he was. Harei Reish Lamed Ches, 238. V'Redu she'amdu b'Mitzrayim, the 210 years that Bnei Yisrael were in Mitzrayim. Harei Tov Mem Ches. We're up to 448. Umishiyotzu Mitzrayim ad shenivne bayis rishon Tov Pei. Right. So there was another 480 years, right, from the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim until the beginning of the building of the first Beis Hamikdash. The Chsiv, as the pasuk says explicitly in Melachim, Vayi b'shmonim shana v'arba me'u shana. It says Bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim. Right. It was in the 480th year after they left Mitzrayim. Harei Taf Kuf Chav Ches, which is 928. Okay. The Taf Yud Shamad Bayis Rishon. According to the Chazal, the first Beis Hamikdash stood for 410 years. Okay, so we're up to 928 plus 410, so 900 is 1,329. We're up to 1,338. Okay, so the Ayin, the Golus Bavel is 1,408. The Taf Chuf She'ama Beis Bayis Sheni, and another 420, which is lost the husband for you told me, right, 1,800 and something like that, right? Hare, he gives us the numbers. Hare Taf Kuf. There's 900. The Taf Kuf Chav Ches and 928, because Rashi was limited in the size of the numbers that he could work with. So it was 900 and 928. Right, Hare Alpayim Pachos Kufayim Beis. So that's 2,000, right, minus 172. The Kufayim Beis Kodam Hashlamas Dalet Alofim. So that means that 172 years before the completion of the 4,000 years of the creation, Nechra Babayis, that's when the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. V'Besof Osan Kufayim Beis Nishnamu Shnei Alofim Sotorah. And so 172 years after the Churban, that's when the Torah was, the years of Torah were completed. Okay, so that means that, which is, again, if you say that the Churban was in the year 70, right, so then Kufayin Beis would be 172, that's 242, and I said it was 240, so okay, so it's give or take a year, right, because there's, sometimes we start counting, and we count the year that we count, the different ways of counting. But anyway, that's the Be'erach, right? 240 in the year 240. That's the end of the 4,000 years. Right? But now, when he says Shnei Alofim Torah, right, it doesn't mean Velosha Tichle Torah Achar Shnei Alofim, right? It doesn't mean that it's 2,000 years of Torah and stop. There's no more Torah. No. But since it used, because as opposed to Tohu, 2,000 years of Tohu, and there was no more Tohu, there was Torah. Torah took the place, right, filled in where the Tohu was. But the 2,000 years of Torah doesn't mean there's only 2,000 years, and after 2,000 years of Torah, there's no more Torah, chas v'sholem. but since they use the Shnei Alofim Torah, they say Shnei Alofim Torah. Right. Shnei Alofim Shnos HaMashiach, Shalachar Shnei Alofim Torah Havid Dino Sheyovo Mashiach. After the 4,000 years of Torah, that's the din. That's when it should be that the Mashiach comes. V'tichle agolus, v'tiboto hashiva miYisrael. That's what Alpi the basic plan. That's how it should have been. Avo b'shvil avonosenu sherabu lo ba Mashiach l'sof daladafim. He didn't come. V'yotzu mashiyotzu shadayin hu me'ukav lavo. Okay. That's as far as we saw in the Gemara, and we'll start it. Good. So let's go page Kuf Mem Gimel, and we'll see what Moshe has to teach us. A lot of interesting things, just in terms of basic background information about the topic, which many of us may not know. Okay, Shnosa Olam Kimei Bereshis. Okay, starting from there. Quotes the Gemara. Trei Charuf Shmita V'Yova. So Mavur beGemara, Sherav Katina Sover Sheolam Yeh Charuf Elef Shanim. It'll be 1,000 years. Kiktiv beYomahu, because it says on that day Yeh Niskav Hashem Levado. Umeshech Yomo Shekadosh Baruch Havi Elef Shanim. U'lemato Abaye Cholek, he argues, v'Sover sheChorban Yeh Shnei Alefim Shana, 2,000 years. U'Pashut Shekeshem she'Elef Hashvi Romez LeShmita, as the Gemara says explicitly, Kach Shnei Alefim Hem Bechinas Shmita V'Yova. When it says 2,000, it means that there's going to be like a Shemitah followed by a Yova. Hatziruf shel Hashvi v'Shmini. Okay, and the bottom he says he found that already in the Sifrei HaKabbalah, that it's that's the machlokas. The machlokas is whether we should look at it as just compared to a single year of Shemitah or to a Shemitah Yova. Elo shegamara v'Arayel of Katina. The Gemara brings a raya to Rav Katina, right? Okay, so we're going to work with that idea that we're talking about 1,000 years of Charuf. Now let's see what is the sixth. I'll use the word millennium. Okay, that's easier to say than 1,000 years. Okay, so the sixth millennium is the millennium of the sixth day of creation, which is the year which is the time of Brias Adam, because Adam was created on the sixth day. Al kol panim katuv kam beGemara, Masha Ramban Omer b'tchilas haTorah. Very famous Ramban, which we'll see a little bit in the footnote in a minute. Sheyesh hakbala ben sheshet yemei Bereshit v'Shabbat lemeshech hazman she'olam kayam. There is a parallel between the 6 days of Bereshit and the Shabbos to the length of the time of the world will exist. V'chol yom mechuvan keneged elef echad misheshet alfei shanim. Every day of creation corresponds to one of the millennia of the millennium, I should say, of the 6,000. Okay, so let's just see a little bit in the Lashon of the Ramban. He brings in the footnote base on the bottom of the page, on the first page. V'zet chilat l'shono. He's only going to bring the first part. It's a very big arichos in the Ramban, and certainly very kedai to read the Ramban in the beginning of Bereshit Perek Beis Pasuk Gimel. But the Ramban writes as follows, because the Ramban's going on the word Asher bara Elokim la'asot. Right? At the end of Vayechulu, right? It says Kivo shavas mikol melachto. Right, on the seventh day, Asher bara Elokim la'asot. So there's different interpretations. What does the word la'asot mean? Okay, Rashi over there. Right. What's Rashi? That la'asot is right. That Rashi says the malacha she'haita ru'uya la'asot b'Shabbat kafal b'asa b'shishi. Right. That la'asot means to include the work that was meant to be on the seventh day, but it was doubled up on the sixth day. Where there was work for both the the sixth and seventh day. And there's other pirushim of the that are brought down in the Mepharshim. Okay, but anyway, but the Ramban, right, says, what does the word lasot mean? He says as follows: Ki sheshet yemei bereshit hem kol yemot olam. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, he created the world such that each day of creation was like, I would call it a seed out of which would sprout 1,000 years. Because the existence of the world is 6,000 years, as the Gemara says here, and the Gemara says Rosh Hashanah. The day of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is 1,000 years. Okay, so now the Ramban explains. There was only water. There was nothing made. There was nothing completed. This is a remez to the tohu. What was the tohu? It was the first 2,000 years, right? That there was nobody who called in the name of Hashem. There was the world did not have a surah of relating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, I mean until Abraham Avinu came along. V'kach amru shnei alafim tohu. That's what the Gemara says. Aval hayta habriya b'yom rishon ha'or. But the Ramban says, but on the first day we did have something good. That was the light. So keneged ha'elef shel yomot adam. That corresponded to the 1,000 years of Adam Arishon's life. Right? And remember, we learned back in the early days when we learned the Sefer, that Abraham Avinu only lived for 930 years, but because he donated 70 years of his life to David HaMelech. The 70 years of life is David HaMelech's continuation of that thing, right? Right. So he says, where are we here? And he knew, and the Ramban says as a possibility, that even during the lifetime of Adam Rishon, there was no Avodah Zarah. So that's why the 1,000 years of Yehior was a special day. But in general, it was a tohu situation. There was nobody who, the world was devoid of any ruchnius, except perhaps for just the single Adam Rishon. Okay, so that's the. Okay, so then let's go on. Maybe we'll go back to the text in the top. Ulfiza, says the Moshe, the top line of the text at the top. Hayom anu nimsaim be'elef hashishi. So today we're in the sixth millennium. Hamakbil yom hashishi shebo HaKadosh Baruch Hu bara et ha'adam. This corresponds to the sixth day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam. K'shakavana hi lemelech hamashiach sheyavo be'elef hashishi. In other words, the creation of Adam in the sixth day, that is really the seed, the forerunner of, which is corresponds to the creation of Adam in the sixth day. Ella, right? Shekodem la'adam nivru b'yom hashishi ha'behemot v'achayot. But on the sixth day, right, there's also behemos and chayos, right? Umevayir amaral, right? Okay, so therefore, on the sixth day, Adam Arishon shares the stage with the chayos and the behemos. Umevayir amaral, shekudugmat zeh matzinu etzel ha'machazeh shel Daniel, in the vision of Daniel, shebetchila ra'a et hadalad malchiyot ketzurot shel chayot. He saw them in the forms of chayot. Aryeh, dov, and namer, min chaya sheikibutz k'chol chayot. Ve'achar kach ra'a et melech hamashiach ki hitgalut shel tzurat adam. And then he saw the Melech HaMashiach, and that was in the form of a Tzurat Adam, Kol Shana Pasuk, Va'aru, and behold, Im Ananei Shemaya, with the clouds of the heavens, Kebar Enosh Osei. He came like a person. There was the vision of Daniel. Right? So when he was, all the other Malchios are compared to Behemoth, and that's why, and because they're also part of the sixth day, but that was the first part of the sixth day when we had the Chayos and the Behemoth and the Chayos, and those are the Arba Malchios are represented by those Chayos and Behemoth, and then comes the turn for for the creation of Adam and the parallel of the history of the world in the creation of the Mashiach. Ubederach dugma. So now Moshe makes an interesting calculation just to work it out. שלפי חשבון השנים יוצא שאנו נמצאים כבר בסוף תהליך בריאת האדם. So if you make a calculation, where are we holding today? I mean, Moshe was talking a number of years ago. That's 30, probably 34, 30 years ago, or something like that, maybe more. Right? So, but you just make a calculation. How do we figure this out? וכריסה בגמרא, שהקדוש ברוך הוא התעסק במשך כל יום השישי בבריאת האדם. So here, it's not exactly the same. Again, he created the behemoths, but there was also involved with the creation of Adam Rishon, the whole of the sixth day. Okay, let's see the calculation. Kol shah, and every hour of the sixth day, shlav nosap b'briato is another stage in the bria of Adam. V'ayom anu amdim kivar b'shah shvi'it sha'achar chatzot. So he says we're already after midday. Okay, right, of the sixth year. Right, why? Key. B'sorim adabrim al zeh mevuar, in the books that talk about these things to explain. Shekol elav shana mechukalakim l'chal chavdal l'shot. 1,000 years is divided into 24 hours. Yud Beit Sha'ot Laila. So here he takes into account that 500 years is Laila, right? Keneged Heimei Shana. So that corresponds to 500 years. So that means that if we're going to start, as we said, that the year 1240 was the beginning of the sixth millennium. So that means so 1740 is from 1240 and 1740 were the years of Lila. Okay, so the 1740 there was an awakening. The Yud Beit Shal Yom Keneged Heimei Shana. So the 12 years of the day corresponds to another 500 years. 12 hours of the day. If you divide 500 by 12, Yotze Shekol Sha'ah Makbila Lemin Beit Sha'ah Be'erach. Every hour is approximately 42 years. It's right if the guy gives us precisely. Mem Aleph Shana v'Ches Chodoshim, and 41 and 2/3. That's the cheshbon. So every hour counts for 41 and 2/3 years. Ulefizeh Chatzot Shel Yom HaShishi. So when is the Chatzot of Yom HaShishi, which is 6 hours, right? After the year 1740, right? Because the year 1740 was the beginning of the day. The time. So 6 years, so 6 times 42 is 240 and 252, right? So Makbil is Sof Shnat Tafshin Nun, right? And I rounded it off to 42. So that takes us to the end of the year Tafshin Nun, which was the year 1990. Okay. Tafshin. Ume'az, so that's the chatzot of the yom. That's midday of the last day of creation. Ume'az matchil kvar zman amin, the second part of the day. Umatchilim litkonen l'Shabbos, and that's the time you have to start getting ready for Shabbos. Okay, so Memela it says Ramosha ve'af she'anu lo mechashvei kitzim. We're not from the mechashvei kitzim. אבל לפי הכלל שאמרנו כאן, שששת אלפי שנה הם בכסרים שמשי מברשס, הדבר הוא עובדה ברורה, שלא זקוקה לעריכת חשבון. You don't have to make חשבונס based on the psukim and Daniel. All you have to do is take a simple, simple arithmetic, which any fifth grader should be able to do, and you get to the idea that the year 1990, which we're already 38 years, well, we're in 2000, 36 years after that, is so 36 years is almost the whole hour, right? 30, the whole hour is 41. So we're almost like we're about 1:45 in the afternoon, right? If 12 o'clock was midday, so it's about 1:45 now. Okay, so it's at least it's a time for Mincha Gedola, right? Okay, so we can already start davening Mincha Gedola for the Friday afternoon. Okay, Beseder. So that's all very interesting background information that Rav Moshe wants us to know. Okay, and okay, so now we're going to get a little bit more into the sugya. Where Chad Choruv me'ikar Seder Azman. Omnam. Ikar Mashem of work on the Gemara. When we came to Amaral, he says, Po b'chidush hagoros, u'b'yoser b'sefer hagoros, different places, and some of them are quoted here in the footnote. We'll see Mitzvah Hashem a little bit in a little while. Right, what's the ikar, as the Maral explains it? She'elef hashvi'i hu chelek bilti nifrad mehaseder hazeh. Because the seventh year is part of the Seder, meaning this. It's not like that. There's something completely different. The seventh year is the Shabbos of the seventh millennium is the Shabbos of the just like Shabbos is connected to the 6 days, so the seventh year is connected to the 6 days. It's all part of the same Seder, right? World exists for 6,000 years. Well, so here, if you look on the footnote, I think the second part here. So in the second, again, the second part says things very clearly. The second part is about in footnote Zion. Okay, we're on the bottom of the page, and 2, 4, 6, 8, about 9 or 10 lines into it, right in the middle of the line, he says, "V'ayim b'perek chav Zayin misefer netzach." You see that? Okay, about 10 lines into the footnote. Ayim perek chav Zayin misefer netzach zal. Masha Amar Kishis Alpha Shane Have Alma Bechad Choriv. So the Maral explains, why does it need to be that way? What's the idea? V'zeh ki hadat mechayev sheyeh Hashem yitbarach levado ba'olamo. That, right? In other words, if you think about it, what's reasonable, what makes sense that it should be, there should be a time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is alone in the world. V'zehu, and this is the meaning of the pasuk, v'niskav Hashem levado b'yom hachu. Ki im ha'olam noheg be'hanagato li'olam. Because if it was going to always be right the way that we experience it now, that there's a God and there are creations, created beings, right? Hayahu yitbarach mitztaref alanim sayim tamid. That means the God will be completely always with us. V'hu yitbarach nivdal mikol. But the fact is that Baruch Hu is separate. He's way above us. He's not part of our existence. He's way exalted above our existence. And even though it's true that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does join us, is connected to us, and the fact that he is the cause of, and the ilah, which is another word for cause, of all of everything that exists, but he certainly is something which is completely separate. To the extent that he is the cause and the cause of the existence, and the cause means that he's what gives everything existence in life. In other words, because of it's his presence, that maintains the existence of all created things. So manhigotam, that's why he leads them and he guides them and he right. V'notein lahem havaya, and he gives them existence. But on the other hand, there's a separate issue. There's a separate dimension, a dimension of nivdal, separate. Hu nizgal levado, v'lo nimsu hanivraim, and then it's something he's by himself without other beings. Ufichach v'chad charev, and that's why we have to have 1,000 years of charev. Shenever nizgal Hashem levado b'yamahu. Sheyeh hu yitbarach bilvad, ve'ein nimsa ito shum etziut, and there shouldn't be anything with him, because otherwise, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, we would appear to be, or we would understand it to be, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is connected to the world in a way which is where he can't be separated from him. It's inextricable. He's there. He's part of the world, and he constantly gives life to the world, and that means that as long that he and the world have some kind of a form of coexistence, and that's not true. So therefore, in order to establish that, it says, okay, because Baruch Hu is with us for 6,000 years, he gives us life, he gives us the kiyum and the chiyus of the six of our existence, but there's going to be a time when that's going to come to an end. That's going to come to where the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's separateness will become paramount. So he said, "L'kach b'meshu mitzaref el nimtzei nimtzu nimtzei b'avayato." The fact he's mitzaref, so then the nimtzei are with him. B'meshu yitbarach nivdal mehem yesh kan shvita mehem. So then there's a shvita. He rests. That's the same word as Shabbos, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is shovet, right? Just like there's a Shabbos, just like Shemitah is called a Shabbos. So there's going to be a time when there's a Shabbos, right? Just like, we could say it like this: it's just like when we're commanded to keep Shabbos. What does that mean? That means that for 6 days we are connected to the gashmias of the world, to the reality of the world, and we're part of it, right? And we have to work and everything we do. But if we didn't have a Shabbos, that would mean that we would be identified with the gashmias that we do, with our with the malacha that we do. We say this is who we are. Like people who have no existence outside of their work. We have people who are workaholics, or people who don't believe in a seventh day of rest because they say no, we identify with our work, and that's exactly what His wanted us not to do. Same thing with Shemitah. If we didn't have a Shemitah, that means we would be identified with our fields, with our land. That means that we wouldn't have any way to establish a separate identity from the physical things that we are involved with. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, no, you have to know that you are separate. But in the same way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bring across this message here that He is separate from the world. True, He's involved with the world, but He's not part of the world. And just like we need a Shabbos to establish our separateness from the physical world, He needs a Shabbos, so to speak, in order to establish His separateness from the world that He created. That's the idea that Maral says. Okay, so let's continue on page Kuf Mem Vav. Okay, so now he's going to tell us a very, very important yesod, very fundamental yesod in the Maral and in the Ramchal. Shisaf in Shnin, the 6,000 years. This is Vav Ktsavot HaMetziut. The 6 Ktsavot. Ktsavot, here we'll translate Ktsavot as the 6 sides of existence. Right? Meaning, because when you take anything, you take things that exist in 3 dimensions, right? So they have 6 sides. They have, right? You take a box, right? A box has 6 sides, right? A cube has 6 sides, right? Top, bottom, right, left, right? Okay. Front and back, right? So there's 6. So existence basically is defined by the number 6. The physical reality is the number 6. Okay. So Masha Seder Azman Mitvahid L'Shit Alfei Shenei. Why is there 6 years, 6 millennia? Yisodo b'itpashtut hametziut levav ktsavot. Daled ruchot ma'alamata, right? That's because metziut, right? The real world has 6 dimensions or 6 sides, right? Right, front, back, right, left, and top and bottom. As we explained in other places. Sheshet yamim ze metziut shekadosh baruch hu bara. Kadosh Baruch Hu created a reality of 6 days, meaning 6 days. It's not just we float through time. There's a reality of there's this first day, a second day, a third day. Every day has a separate compartment of existence. Okay? It says, we say this every week, right? In the Chumash it says, Hashem made Sheishes Yomim. V'lo ne'amar b'Sheishes Yomim. It doesn't say in the pasuk that in 6 days it took God to create. No, God created 6 days. So the 6 days, just like we have in the physical reality, we have 6 sides. We have the of existence, right, as we described. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created 6 days. Right? Each day is part of the we'll call it the temporal existence of the world. Right? We've already explained. Shamispar Elef. So right, so that's that applies to the year to the six. Okay, six is right, the parallel to the way that the world is mitpashet. It spreads through the physical world, right? Through the three dimensions of space that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. So we understand that God created three dimensions of space for us to exist in. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created dimensions of time as well, right? Six dimensions of space. So the three dimensions of space really have six hitpashtut in six directions, and so the 6,000 years also have the 6,000 is that creation. Another thing about the Shemispar Elef, the number 1,000. Hu hamispar hagavoa biyoter b'loshen hakodesh. It's the highest number in Loshen HaKodesh. We have Yechidot, Asarot, Me'ot, V'alafim. Okay, say there, units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. V'ha'erech hamispari shel otiot aleph bet, im otiot hasofiot shel kemanat patz, o le'ad l'tshah me'ot tishim v'teisha. Okay, what does that mean? Here, explain what it means. He says like this. We know gematria, aleph beis, right? Aleph is 1, beis is 2, okay? Until we get to resh 200, shin is 300, and tuf is 400. In other words, we have the units from aleph to 1 through 9, right? And then we have the tens from yud through from 10 through 90, yud through tzaddik, and then from kuf we start with the hundreds, right? So we have kuf resh shin tuf, so that's 100, 200, 300, 400. How do we get to 900? He says here with the osios hasofiot, chaf sofit, mem sofit, nun sofit, pe sofit, and tzadik sofit. So in the order that we have, in the order that they're given here. So the chaf is right represents the chaf sofit. The chaf sofit will represent the number 500 because it comes out tough is 400. Chaf sofit is 500. Mem is sofit 600. Nun sofit 700, Peit sofit is 800, and Tzadik sofit is 900. Okay, and then so if you take the Tzadik sofit, right, there's the highest in the hundreds, it's 900. You take the Tzadik, which is the highest in the tens, which is 90, and you take the Tes, which is 9, or the highest 90. The highest number you can get to if you work with these combinations is 999. Okay? Then you've run out of letters, and then you come back to 1,000. That's the way, in the wisdom of the Hebrew language, that's the way we count numbers. Okay, so probably not going to be able to do differential equations using this form of counting, but that's the way that's the way we have the numbers. Okay, up to the 999 is the highest number, and so 1,000 is the unit which represents the totality of things. V'soda Aleph, the next paragraph. When things reach perfection, we start over again. Okay, we start over again, maybe on a higher level, but we've come. It's a circle. We've come full circle. When we get to the number 1,000, that's the completion of the circle. So in all of the Metziut, there are 6 parts. Shekol echad hu elef, and each one is a whole thing, the most complete thing of 1,000. V'hen keneged kvav ksavot hametziut. This represents the 6 directions of the physical, the 3-dimensional world. V'chol elef hu metziut shleima b'fnei atzma, and each millennium is a whole metziut by itself. Hamakbil etzad echad me'avav ksafot, just like each day of creation was a separate day. Each one was a separate unit, right? Right, it was created on the 4th day, was not created on the 5th day. Right? Because Baruch Hu created them, right? Each day as a separate unit, and so each millennium is a separate unit of time. It's not that they just just convenient marker of okay, let's count there, but each one is a separate existence. And each one of these millennium is just another face. And pan is like a singular panim, of a certain face, a certain aspect of the way that the world is spread out through time. Okay, Ubesefer Yetzira. Okay, now, right. So where does the number 7 come in? Okay, so now this is what we're going to learn from the Sefer Yetzira, which is, according to the Kadmonim, was attributed to Avram Avinu. Achar shemevaret inyan havav ksavot shemetzius. After he explains these inyan of the 6 sides, katuv shamod sheyesh bechinas nosefet shvi'it. There's a 7th. Shenikret hechal hakodesh hu be'emsa. That's called the hechal hakodesh, which is the middle point. Okay, what does that mean? Uvarim shom rishonim, and he says you can see the kuzar, you can look it up. Shashesh ktsavot hem tzurat haitgalut shel hametziut l'chol tzad. True, the 6 sides are the way the metziut is revealed in each of the direction. Aval etzem hametziut nimtzet betoch atzma v'lo mitgala. The etzem, what the real source of existence is in that point. There's a center point which powers everything that exists. Whatever you see around it is a manifestation of the etzem, that point, but that point has no dimensions, just like a point in geometry has no dimensions. It's just a point, but that is the source of all the power of the world. Everything that comes from that. And in the footnote, he says, Dugma ledavar, right in the bottom there, Harei hayom kol yeled yodea ma sheni machzik biyad yesh lo pnimiut shelo mitka b'chutza, right? There he says, as a marshal, right? Everybody knows that when I'm holding this book in my hand, it's not that there's a lot of pnimiut in it, right? You got whole worlds of atoms and molecules and all kinds of things that you can't see. Uma sheni ro'eh, and what I do see is Zerak Tseva v'tzurot shel Galut. It's just the forms of how they're revealed in this world, right? Avol zelo adavar b'atzmo, but that's not the thing itself. The thing itself is the atoms that make it up. That's what it really is. You break it down. Adavar b'atzmo hu pnimi v'nistar. The thing itself is completely hidden. It's completely pnimi. So therefore, when Baruch Hu created the world, He created the world with a davar pnimi. That's why the number 7 is always holy, right? Kol hashvit is chavivim, and the number 7 is the number which represents kedusha in this world, right? Shabbos and Shemitah and everything else that goes with that, right? And what is that? What is that number 7? That number 7 is that nekuda hapnimit ha'emtzait, from which everything is mitpashet. Everything spreads from there. Everything is given life from that point. That's the life force of everything. Vizeh Soda Shabbat. And this is what Shabbos is all about. Sheba Ne'emar, Al Yetze Ish Mimkomo Bayom HaShvi'i. Pasuk says, by Parshas B'Shalach, that a person should not go out of his place. Ki HaShabbat hi b'bechina shebizman, shenishrak shoei lav yitbarach. Because just like we have in space, there's a middle space. Time, Shabbos is that point in time, which is connected, constantly connected with Kodesh Baruch Hu. V'zeu inyan nekudat ha'emsa, shehi lo mitgala l'chutz b'gvulotah shel mitzvot. You can't see it within the boundaries of the mitzvot. In other words, and the 6 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, you don't see the pnimi of Shabbos. You can't see it, but the pnimi of Shabbos is what gives life, and that spreads its force and its koach to all the other 6 days. So, but that day is nisheret beruchaniuta u'betorata. It stays in its spirituality and its purity, kshura b'mikora, and that's completely bound up with the source. L'chein Shabbat hi me'ein olam haba. Shehi me'ein b'chinat hazman shel olam haba elef hashvi. Because Olam Haba, that's the 7th Shvi, that's the 7th Elef. L'chein b'meshech kol yemei achol shebechinat itpashtut hazman anachnu ovdim upoalim giluyim shonim b'olam. We do all kinds of things in the world, right? We work and we create things and we make things and we do all kinds of things. That's the hitpashtut. That's the spreading of that koach. Abu b'Shabbat, shavat v'yinafash. that that's complete rest. Ha'olam kashur lemamsi, and the world becomes completely connected to its creator, to the mamsi, to the one who gives it mitziut. Ve'ein makom la'avodah v'asiyah shelana. There's no place for us because we're completely bottled to that point of pnimiut, right? And so therefore we don't. So we lose our existence. Right? Through that bittul, we have that existence that Baruch Hu gave us, that we could do things, we could plant and we could harvest and we can cook and we can build all of those things. Because Baruch Hu gave us to in the dimensions of time which are a little bit separated from it, which are the hitpashtut of that nakuda. But on Shabbos we return to the nakuda, and in the nakuda we're completely bottled to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have no independent koach of activity, and just to be nene from, just like an Olam Haba will be nene from the Ziv HaShechina in a passive way, just to experience closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's what Shabbos is all about. Shabbos is all about this experiencing the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our world, and then we can connect to that Nakudah Pnimit, which is going to be the Nakudah Pnimit of the seventh day. Okay, we'll stop here for today. I think that we've done quite a bit today, and we'll carry on Mitzvah Shem. Next week is still before Purim, right? Purim is Monday night, right? Correct? Right. Purim is Monday night, so Sunday night we should be able to learn. Okay. Okay, very good.
Thank you, Rav. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Rav.
Everybody learned some important things
Thank you,
tonight.
Rabbi.
Yeah, okay, be well, Kol Tuv. I'll see you, Mr. Shem.